Hello everyone and welcome to Friday's edition of the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. Now you might have noticed that there was no news show yesterday. That is because we are back streaming. It was the only thing I could grab. The kegs. Been waiting so long to get back bloody streaming. Seemed that everybody enjoyed it last night. If you want to get involved in the streams, make sure you hit that notification bell. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not subscribed, just bloody subscribe anyway. I want 35,000 of you subscribing by the end of this Giro. Make sure you hit that like button as well. But we had a load of fun last night in the stream. I'll try and announce the races of when I'm racing as soon as I can on Instagram. Go and follow me there at Chris_Pritch_ or cycling.show. All the details will be there and you'll be able to find out when I'm racing and hopefully get involved in those races as well as get involved in that chat in the stream. It was a load of fun last night and there's plenty more to come through the winter. Now before we get into stage 7 of today's Giro and the big news that Paris-Roubaix has been cancelled, let's catch up with all the action that's been happening the past couple of days. So yesterday's stage was won by Arnaud Démare. He made everybody look pretty silly in that sprint. He managed to put a big gap between a lot of the rest of the sprinters and took the victory, which is his second victory of this year's race. Tom Pritchard can add another World Championship to his palmarès now as he takes the e-mountain bike World Championships in Austria. The podium was rounded out by Jérôme Guillou of France, and in third place was Denmark's Simon Andresen. He was 49 seconds back from Pritchard, who was 35 seconds ahead of second place, and he soloed to victory in only the second ever e-mountain bike World Championship. Now as Jumbo-Visma get ready to take on La Vuelta, it appears that Tom Dumoulin and Primož Roglič, similar to we saw in the Tour de France, will be sharing leadership at this year's Spanish Tour. In an interview with Dutch broadcaster Juan Limburg, Dumoulin said, "If I'm better in the Vuelta, he will ride for me, and if Primož is better again, then we'll have the same scenario as the Tour. I don't want to ride for myself and then finish 7th if he finishes 4th and I've done no work for him." So similar to we saw in the Tour de France, I think had Primož won the Tour de France, he wouldn't be taking part in La Vuelta, but seems he wants to try and salvage something from his season. Do you think Primož Roglič will be able to lift himself up from that well, I say it was a battering. There's no two ways about it. It was a battering by Tadej Pogačar. So do you think Primož Roglič has recovered both physically and mentally from the Tour de France? And if so, do you think he's going to go into it as the favourite to win La Vuelta? Or do you think Tom Dumoulin might have ridden himself into some form from the Tour de France and actually he goes there and he's much better than Primož Roglič? Leave your comments down below. So next up, and the biggest story of today, is the news that Paris-Roubaix has been cancelled, both the men's and the women's race. This was going to be the 118th edition for the men and the first ever edition for the women, but they've now been postponed, gone back to their original date, well, the men's original date in April for 2021, meaning there's no Paris-Roubaix. But if it's the only race, or there's only a handful of races that fall to the COVID pandemic, then we've done well. But it just so happens that the biggest one-day classic is one that has fallen, and that's down to the increase of COVID-19 cases in France, especially up in the Nord department, with the Finnish town of Roubaix situated in the area that has been assigned the highest threat level. Now the ASO attempted to try and provide local authorities with assurances that they could run restricted events, but they were forced to announce the cancellation this morning. Statement on Friday morning from the ASO said, at the request of the Préfet du Nord, Préfet des Hauts-de-France, nailed it, and following the Health Minister Olivier Véran's announcement yesterday that placed the Lille metropolitan area on maximum alert, the 118th edition of the Paris-Roubaix UCI World Tour and the first edition of the Paris-Roubaix Femmes, the UCI Women's World Tour, originally scheduled to take place on the 25th of October, will not be organised. Paris-Roubaix, an incredibly popular event and one that is met with great enthusiasm every year, has already been postponed from its original date of the 12th of April following the containment measures put in place in spring to fight against the spread of COVID-19. So the 2021 event is scheduled for the 11th of May. Fingers crossed that should be going ahead. I'm so excited to see that first ever edition of the women's. Now, let me ask you a question. If Paris-Roubaix was going to take place, who would be winning it this year? Who would be winning the men's? And who would be winning the women's? It's kind of such a shame that we're not actually going to get to see it, because we're going to see it in a whole different environment in the autumn kind of stroke winter time, it could, in fact, it's probably best that they do cancel it, because you can't help thinking that it's going to be wet, wild and windy. And yes, it'll make great racing for us, but won't be great racing for the riders. But yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on who you think could have won this year's Paris-Roubaix. All right, stage 7 of the Giro d'Italia is in the books, and the biggest talking point was this crash here at 45 kilometers to go. As you can see, for some reason, the organisers still aren't quite on the ball when it comes to sorting barriers out, and we seem to be still having issues with barriers. These ones here actually ended up breaking as the riders crashed. There was a bit of a pinch point just so, well, the organisers could show that there was 45 kilometers to go, instead of just extending that barrier out a little bit and putting it over the edge of the crash barrier that was already there on the road. They decided to narrow the road up a little bit, which caused the crash in the first instance. Now, this stage had already been cagey. It was a flat stage, but there was potential of crosswinds that you rarely see in the Giro d'Italia, but crosswinds played a part in this race, and there were lots of groups all over the road. And it was, sometimes, yeah, it was pretty difficult to actually keep an eye on what was going on. But as the race got back underway, the riders got back on their bikes. The group containing Filippo Ganna in that blue jersey was 1 minute and 11 seconds down at 39.5 kilometers to go, and still potential that wind could cause some disruption within that main peloton. And you can see here 31.2 kilometers to go. Filippo Ganna's group was still 1 minute and 13 behind, but in between that and the Maglia Rosa group, there was a group containing Ilnur Zakarin, and that was 36 seconds down, and that was trying its hardest to get back to that main peloton. Now, try as they might, you can see here, look how stretched out that peloton is. The front of this peloton was at full gas. They didn't want any of these groups to come back, and they were making sure that if any point that peloton did split, the right riders were in the front part of it. Now, coming in with 15 kilometers to go, it was such a nervous affair at the front of that peloton. All the riders who were in GC wanted to make sure that they were up there, because they didn't want to, you could be losing big time on this. This is a flat stage, and these GC riders knew that they could potentially be losing a lot of time, so they were forcing their riders to get to the front. The team of Deceuninck Quickstep with Almeida, they were at the front. They were making sure their leader and the Maglia Rosa was where he needed to be. And then on top of that, you got riders who want to go for that stage victory. So that exasperated that whole speed at the front of the peloton. They were full as. And the peloton just kept that pace up all the way to the end. Coming into the last kilometre, FDJ got on the front, and as you'd expect, in form at the minute, Arnaud Démare takes his 3rd victory of this year's Giro. Peter Sagan once again, 2nd place. Ben Swift was up there as well. Just looks like he's missing just a little bit of top end. Seemed to get balked a lot, and then he struggled to get back to the front, where the rest of the riders, Arnaud Démare, Peter Sagan, were just sat at the front, just waiting for their lead out riders. But Arnaud Démare takes his 3rd victory at this year's Giro. So thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure, if you've not done already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you've disliked the video for whatever reason, hit that dislike button. Leave your comments down below what's going to happen over the weekend with the Giro. Let me know who you think could have potentially won this year's Paris-Roubaix, and I'll see you after weekend. Have a good one, everybody. Stay positive and all that jazz. Bye.